Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to do something a little different today. Think of this explainer as a true crime-style autopsy, but for a billion-dollar corporate catastrophe. We are meticulously unpacking a completely complex, systemic failure that played out on a massive national stage. We're looking at the infamous Southwest Airlines meltdown, which is honestly the absolute premier example of how invisible, behind-the-scenes choices can literally paralyze a massive operation. 16,000. Just let that sink in for a sec. In December 2022, that is the staggering number of flights completely canceled by Southwest Airlines. And get this, it wasn't spread out over a year. This all happened in a matter of days. Try to imagine the sheer, mind-boggling scale of that disruption. We're talking hundreds of thousands of passengers stranded, sleeping on freezing hard terminal floors, totally separated from their families during the holidays. Mountains of lost luggage were piling up so high they literally blocked walkways. It was an absolute, undisputed logistical nightmare. But you have to wonder, how does a modern massive airline just stop working?
Well, here's our flight plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the December 2022 meltdown itself. Second, we'll define technical debt. Third, we'll cover the catastrophic SkySolver failure. Fourth, their point-to-point routing system. And finally, we'll tally up the $800 million lesson.
All right, starting off with Part 1, the December 2022 meltdown.
So this whole crisis actually kicked off in the physical world. A massive, incredibly severe winter storm started sweeping across the United States. Temperatures plummeted, ice covered the runways, and, naturally, air travel across the entire country was heavily disrupted. Almost every major airline had to delay or cancel flights just to keep people safe. You know, that's just standard operating procedure for winter aviation. But that brings us to a really vital question. Was it just the weather? Seriously, when you look at the unprecedented scale of Southwest's 16,000 cancellations, you really have to ask yourself, could a winter storm alone actually take down an entire airline's operation to this magnitude? Especially when, and this is key, their competitors were recovering within just a day or two. The answer is a definitive, absolute no. While the whole world initially blamed the snow and the ice, we really have to draw a line between a standard weather event and a systemic failure. A weather event causes temporary delays, right? You execute a standard recovery protocol, and within a day or two, you are right back on track, which, again, is exactly what their competitors did. A systemic failure, on the other hand, results in a complete operational collapse. So the storm? The storm was not the root cause. It was merely a trigger. It was essentially the ultimate stress test that pushed an already fragile, overburdened system right off the cliff into total unrecoverable paralysis.
Which leads us perfectly into Part 2. What exactly is technical debt?
To really understand this collapse, we have to pivot away from the physical weather outside the airport and look at the invisible, underlying disease inside the company's computer servers that actually caused the meltdown. Technical debt is basically the hidden cost of prioritizing short-term, easy fixes or rapid growth over long-term infrastructure and software upgrades. So, the crucial point is, it's kind of like a massive iceberg. Those stranded passengers in the winter storm, that was just the tip of the iceberg visible above the freezing water. But below the surface, lurking totally out of sight for years, was this massive mountain of outdated, decaying computer code and ignored system upgrades. You see, every time a company chooses to open a new route or push for rapid expansion, rather than update its core technology, it essentially takes out a high-interest loan against its own future. Executives often justify this because, hey, on a normal sunny day, the old systems hold up just fine. But in December 2022, that interest compounded and Southwest's bill finally came due.
Let's move on to Part 3, the SkySolver failure.
Okay, let's meet the specific piece of technology at the absolute center of this disaster. SkySolver. This was Southwest's archaic legacy crew scheduling software. It was the digital brain that was supposed to match pilots and flight attendants to specific airplanes. But, oh man, it acted as a literal ticking time bomb that led to a complete cascading failure. Let's walk through it. Step 1. The winter storm disrupts the initial schedule. Planes are grounded, meaning crews are suddenly totally out of position. Step 2. The system attempts to process mass crew reassignments to get everything back on track. Now, Step 3 is where the true catastrophe hits. The legacy SkySolver software completely fails to scale. It was such an archaic system that it fundamentally could not compute the sheer mathematical volume of changes required by a nationwide storm. It essentially just froze under the pressure. Which leads to Step 4, a total digital blackout. Crews and planes were completely disconnected from each other. Pilots were waiting at airports, Planes were fully fueled and ready to go, but the software had absolutely no idea who was where. The system was so deeply broken that the company literally had to resort to asking their highly trained employees to manually call into a central phone bank just to state their physical location. I mean, just imagine thousands of crew members sitting on hold for hours, listening to hold music, while their entire nationwide network just grinds to a total halt. It's absolutely wild.
Now for part 4, point-to-point routing.
So the software failure was obviously catastrophic, but Southwest's specific business strategy is what made recovery practically impossible. Unlike most competitors who use a hub-and-spoke model, where planes constantly return to a massive central base like Atlanta or Chicago, Southwest actually uses a point-to-point model. Their planes fly direct between varying scattered cities all day long. And this brilliantly illustrates the real issue. In a hub-and-spoke system, when operations are stressed, crews and planes naturally funnel back to a central hub where management can easily, physically locate and reassign them. But because of Southwest's heavily decentralized setup, when their digital tracking failed, their crews were just scattered across dozens of random cities everywhere. There was no central hub to regroup at. A pilot might be stuck in Denver, their co-pilot in Dallas, and their assigned planes sitting over in Nashville. The physical logistics perfectly and tragically compounded the digital failure, ultimately sealing the airline's fate.
Bringing us to our final section, part 5, the $800 million lesson.
When you blend a severe weather trigger, an archaic software failure, and a heavily decentralized physical network, what is the final cost? Well, the crisis escalated with compounding speed. On day 1, the winter storm hits, the standard stressor that every single airline faced. By day 2, the internal digital foundation breaks down as that SkySolver software just completely crashes under the massive computational load. Moving into day 3, the physical structure breaks down as those point-to-point logistics leave untracked crews completely stranded across the continent without a way home. And finally, by day 4, the digital failure has directly caused total physical paralysis, snowballing into that absolutely staggering 16,000 total flight cancellations.
$800 million. That is the immediate financial hit Southwest took in lost revenue, passenger reimbursements, and operational scrambling. But keep in mind, this number is just the explicit on-paper cost. It doesn't even begin to account for the massive, perhaps totally incalculable reputational damage. Think about it. How many passengers, after spending days sleeping on the floor of a terminal and missing Christmas with their families, swore they would literally never fly the airline again?
This entire catastrophe leaves us with some vital takeaways for any modern enterprise. First, the storm was just a trigger, exposing an existing, long-ignored weakness. Second, legacy software couldn't scale when it mattered most. Third, physical logistics, that unique point-to-point model, fatally compounded the digital failure. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fourth point, the ultimate lesson for any organization. Growth must not outpace infrastructure. Prioritizing rapid expansion while ignoring the vital, invisible tech stack that actually supports it, it has catastrophic costs.
Which brings us to a final, really pressing thought for you all. Take a look at your own organization, your own projects. What hidden technical debt exists in your own workplace? What archaic system, undocumented process, or patched-together software is currently acting as a ticking time bomb, just waiting for its own winter storm to trigger a collapse? It's a fascinating and honestly slightly terrifying question to consider. Go investigate the invisible infrastructure in your own professional life today. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.